Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Juma Mubarak. Today is September 4th. I know most people would say fall has not begun, but the minute September creeps in, it is fall as far as I'm concerned, which means pumpkins and orange and everything spicy. So I love it. It's my favorite time of year. So welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining us. Today we have Brother Iftekhar Hussain, who is going to be doing a 4-part lecture for us. And the topic, I should have been more prepared. I apologize. The topic is living Islam with purpose. And then following Brother Iftekhar's talk, Hanan Said-Souadda, that name sounds a little familiar, will be talking on the importance of the Muslim vote. So again, thank you for joining us. And Iftekhar, I'm going to turn it over to you, inshallah.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Inna alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh. Wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. Allah reminds us, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. You who believe, be mindful of Allah as is His due, and make sure you devote yourselves to Him to your dying moment. And it reminds us, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. People, be mindful of your Lord who created you from a single soul, and from it created its mate, and from the pair of them spread countless men and women far and wide. Be mindful of Allah, in whose name you make requests of one another. Beware of severing the ties of kinship. Allah is always watching over you. And He finally reminds us, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Believers, be mindful of Allah, speak in a direct fashion and to good purpose, and He will put your deeds right for you and forgive you your sins. Whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger will truly achieve a great triumph. So as Sister Nicole introduced, this is going to be a series. It is actually a longer series than 4 parts. It's probably closer to 10 parts. And it is a summary of a seminal position paper that our dear Sheikh, Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah, wrote a number of years ago by the same title, Living Islam with Purpose. And I have had the opportunity to present a summary of these thoughts contained in his paper a number of times at various masajid in the Delaware Valley. And I thought it would be useful for us to revisit on behalf of mainland Muslim society those same thoughts and ideas. The first time I presented this was probably 12 years ago at Villanova Masjid, on the mainland. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have told us that in response to a question where one of the companions asked him which people were the best. And it's an interesting question because obviously the Arabs, the Quraysh in particular, considered themselves the elite. And within the Quraysh, the Makhzumi family, the Makhzumi clan, considered themselves the financial elite. And the Hashim family considered themselves the political elite. And these ideas of elitism were present within the tribe of Quraysh that was composed of 14 families, 14 extended families. But it also was a very clear nature and notion that many of the Arabian tribes at the time of the Prophet in the Jazirat al-Arab were partaking in. Right? So this is not a strange question. What is wonderful and amazing is how the Prophet ﷺ responded to it, right? He didn't name a tribe, he didn't name a family, he didn't name genealogies. What did he say? He said, you'll find that people are like mines of gold and silver, right? So even in this first part of his statement, what does the Prophet ﷺ do? He establishes the innate possibilities, the innate goodness and the innate possibilities of all human beings, because he simply says you will find that people are mines of gold and silver. And then he elaborates. He says, the best of you in the time of ignorance, the best of you in the time of ignorance before Islam will be the best of you in Islam if they gain understanding of the religion. Now, this second part is amazingly weighty and significant, because the Prophet ties in the idea of Jahiliyyah, which is precisely what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet to extract the Quraysh, Arabia at that time, and the world at large from his time to the Day of Judgment, to extract human beings out of this, as the Quran says, out of darkness into light. And as the Prophet here indicates for us, out of Jahiliyyah into something that is away from it, right? So the best of you in the time of ignorance before Islam. So he situates Jahiliyyah, the idea of Jahiliyyah, or the period of ignorance before Islam, which is the coming of his own messengership and the emergence of his own messengership, the final prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He demarcates that, right? That if you were good in Jahiliyyah before Islam, okay, and this should now warrant a question in our minds as to what is good here, right? So the best of you in the time of ignorance before Islam, if you were good, if you were the best, you will continue to be the best of you in Islam if you gain an understanding of the religion. So what our ulama really extracted from this is there are traits that make an individual, a family, a community, a nation, a society, that it is able to demonstrate certain good, solid traits. And those good, solid traits, if they're coupled with a sound understanding of this religion, then it will create the best of peoples, right? It'll create the best of peoples. The other interesting notion that the Prophet ﷺ indicates by equating people with mines of gold and silver. A mine of gold and silver, if left unmined, is what? Merely potential. But when we go in and we take the trouble to dig deep, right? Mines of gold and silver are not, the gold doesn't float on the surface. In most cases, they're deep into the mountains or into the earth, similar to silver. And you have to dig and you have to struggle to take it out, and then you have to extract it from the rocks, and you have to purify it and filter it, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of effort involved in extracting the value of gold and silver out of the mines that contain the gold and silver. And hence, there is a clear implication and an indication that the Prophet ﷺ is leaving us with, that we need to work on our potential, to realize the potential and to instantiate the potential for the benefit of not just us, but of all of humanity. Therefore, you will find that people are mines of gold and silver, and the best of you in the time of ignorance, taking what is innately good, even in the time of ignorance, you then become the best of you in Islam, provided you understand this religion. So, inshallah, the sequential and weekly presentations that I hope to share with you elaborates on the idea of gaining understanding of this religion. What constitutes gaining a sound understanding of religion? Do you have to become a scholar and have spent 10 years in seminary and another 10 years studying at the feet of various scholars to then become capable of producing good for society, very few of us become scholars. That is a given, right? Scholarship is a highly rarefied field, and this is not what is intended by this hadith. What is, however, intended by this hadith is a sound understanding of this religion, and that is an obligation on all of us as the those who obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and submit to what the Prophet ﷺ brought, and thereby achieve this status of being like gold and silver. So the need for this deep understanding of Islam, both on a personal level and on a community level, this is not lost on American Muslims. This is not lost on anybody who desires to improve his or her connection with Allah, his or her love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is there, but what is the framework in which we approach this, right? So many of you, if you reflect on how you have understood Islam, you will find all sorts of possible answers. I learned with my father, I learned with my mother, I am a convert, and I learned with this good person that I met. But then, he left town, and then my learning stopped. Or so many of us who are born into Islam, we got a prepackaged understanding of Islam, which was very simplified, and some of us have done okay with it, and most of us have not been able to do well with it. And then the fact that we have just emerged out of the 20th century and have already spent 20 years, 1/5 of the 21st century, is not lost on us, because we live in a time and in a place, and place is less important than the time, because the culture of the world is universal. It's global. It is a culture that drives consumer behavior, that promotes consumerism as its highest value. That publicly we are what we consume, we are what we wear, we are what we look like, and so on and so forth. And rarely is it we are the way we behave, we are the values we live, right? And so our scholars have thought deep about this question. What is it that defines us, and what is a framework in which we understand our religion in a sound manner? And Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah, may Allah be so pleased with him and give him long life so that we continue to benefit from his wisdom and his scholarship, proposed that like the lists of 5 that we have in our tradition, we have 5 pillars, we have 5 key purposes of this Sharia. So we have lists of 5, which is quite common in our tradition, in our scholarly tradition. So he proposed a new set of 5, and we will inshallah look at each one of these in great detail in the weeks to come. And the ones that he proposes to us, the number 1 is that we should, when we deal with life, when we deal with each other, this is a general thing. It's not just about religion. It's about how we deal with each other and through life. That we should, number 1, trust in our ability to reason. We should trust in our ability to reason. That is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the capacity to reason. We should recognize it, and then we should use that capacity to reason in everything that we consider, in everything that we do. And this reasoning capacity is an innate capacity that needs to be developed. It's an innate capacity that Allah has given us through the presence of our fitrah, an innate capacity to reason, but it must be developed, it must be fed, it must be nurtured, and then it must be used. And our scholarship developed multiple frames of rational thought that they apply to all of our sciences, right? Including our spiritual sciences, right? Including our spiritual sciences. And let alone our textual sciences like tafsir or ilm al-hadith or usul al-fiqh, or fiqh itself. All of these are rational sciences, and they rely greatly in navigating what the text means. And text here means two things: Allah's words and the Prophet's example, captured either through his words or through his actions, or essentially through his indications, right? This is essentially the three components of the Sunnah: what the Prophet said, what the Prophet did, as recorded and observed by his companions, and what the Prophet, through indirect indicators, through body language or through smiling or frowning, what he indicated, were either approved or disapproved, what he approved or disapproved. All of these three forms of viewing the Prophet's behavior in his life is what guides us, right? And all of these are to be understood through an interaction with our rational mind vis-a-vis the text that has been handed out to us. So trusting in reason is a very critical skill, and our scholars tell us that we must develop individual capacity to reason properly. There is sound reasoning and there is unsound reasoning. How do you know what the difference is? Well, this is what our scholars guide us to learn. We're living at a time when leadership in this country particularly is flaunting all kinds of established scientific knowledge, right? And so many of our fellow citizens are falling prey to what is absolutely unsound knowledge, unsound information that has been established within our modern lives in the 20th century as sound principles, scientific principles, or whatever other principles that have been established through the acquisition of knowledge. And yet we are able to, through a ideological set of propaganda or repetition of untruths, able to establish that as the truth of so many people, right? So people still continue to argue, well, masking is not important in the era of COVID. There's no scientific basis that would not support the masking, and yet we are able to, through sheer propaganda, challenge that basic scientific notion that if you cover your mouth and if the other party covers their mouth, statistically, you reduce the chances of the transmission of COVID, the COVID virus. And yet we are able to challenge that. It is amazingly unfathomable that this is happening. It is because we have lost our ability to trust in our own capacity to reason. So what is the next one? Umar Farooq Abdullah tells us that it is respecting dissent. It's the ability to respect difference that arise in our lives. We are individuals. We are not all created alike, other than in our essences. But Allah has also created differences. He indicates that to us due to our languages and our colors, right? That Allah has given us a variety of language, and language is a projection of a certain way of thinking, because language is how we express our thoughts, right? How we express our thoughts is primarily done through language, and each of the wondrous languages that Allah has blessed us with has a variety of ways of expressing certain aspects of our lives in better ways than others. So each of these languages are precious. Each of these languages contribute to our understanding of the self, of our history, and of our world. And hence, we must learn the ability to respect dissent that will naturally and normally arise due to the differences of our languages, and also the differences of our colors. The differences of our colors is an indication of the differences of our ethnicities, captured in our skin colors, right? And Islam, and in the Muslim tradition, that is valued. We value it, we honor it, at least on paper. That does not mean that Muslim societies are not racist. That does not mean that Muslim societies fall short, or Muslims themselves fall short of this goal. And that's why our Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah tells us that we need to learn the ability to respect dissent. Um, uh, the scholars developed a whole discipline in the sacred sciences called adab al-ikhtilaf, the etiquettes of disagreement. And this is the etiquette of disagreement amongst scholars. But the principles of the etiquettes of disagreement become critically important for us, generally speaking, to acquire. Not because we're going to become scholars, but because applying those principles will allow us to listen deeply and benefit well from different ideas and different thoughts. So that's the second idea. There's a third idea in which our scholars say that we have to learn that the expression of our obedience to Allah privately is salah, it is fasting, right? These are our private expressions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they cannot be put aside in favor of the thing that I'm about to express to you. They are the foundation. But the proof to the world that we are obedient servants of Allah is the expression of our obligations to society. And one of the first things is zakah, of course, that we know that Allah tells us that our wealth is a gift to us, and it remains unpure for us until we give of it in zakah. And only when we do that, that the remaining wealth becomes pure for us to consume. That if we don't give it, anything and everything that we consume from the gift of wealth to us, because the gold and the mine, these are not yours, these are not mine, these are Allah's, and we are custodians of it for our lifetime. The wheat that we eat turn into bread, and the rice that we make pilaf with, these are grown not by our by our facilitation, but by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says this multiple times in the Quran. So all of the resources of this planet that we live in are gifts from Allah, and therefore there are obligations on it for the rest of us. If I control 10 acres of land and I grow wheat on it, there is a portion of it that is due not to me and my family, but due to somebody else. This is the essence of zakah, and this is the essence of our societal obligation. So our scholars say that we must demonstrate to ourselves and to the community at large, Muslims or otherwise, that we are committed to recognizing that we live in a shared world, that we live in a world where we have obligations to each other, and that is expressed and established by sharing the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. So stressing societal obligation. And we'll look at each one of these, inshallah, in greater detail in the following weeks as to what precisely does that mean. For specifically our context, we are Americans and we are Muslims, or we are Muslims and we are Americans, but we're also Pakistanis and Italians and Eritreans and Algerians and Egyptians and a whole host of beautifully diverse ethnic groups with amazing differences and amazing achievements. How do we contribute all of that which is best in improving the lot of our community, right? Improving the lot of our lives in America. I knew of a friend who converted many years ago when I was a student in college, and he told me with sadness that Americans are ready for Islam. From his perspective, Americans are ready for Islam, to receive the beauty of Islam, but Muslims are not ready to give it yet. And he had been Muslim for less than a year when he came up with this gem, right? And it shocked me because he said that, and then he retired from the community of students amongst whom he had found Islam, and he had converted. But he could sense it was an older. I was in my late teens at this time, and he was in his late 20s. And I recognized that he had seen something that I still couldn't, understand. It took me a number of years later to understand what he meant. What he meant was that Muslims that he had encountered in his short, less than 12 months of being in the Muslim tradition, that we Muslims, including me, were not ready to share the beauty of Islam that he had found on his own, and had come to find the community utterly incapable of really sharing this amazing gift from Allah of guidance with the rest of America. So when we don't understand our societal obligation, we will fail ultimately in being, as Allah says, "Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nasi ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah." Indeed, we have created you as the best of nations, raised for mankind. That is, raised for being exemplary to mankind, the exemplars. The Prophet ﷺ was the exemplar to us and to all of humanity. And we as a community are to be exemplars, and we cannot be exemplars unless we have upright characters individually and we stress our societal obligations to the community. There are two more, briefly, two more ideas. The fourth one is that we as a community have to learn to have shared priorities. What is our priority? Where do we need to invest our time and our effort? And the American Muslim community remains challenged in its ability to see a shared vision, not a single vision, but a shared vision. African Americans have an identity and an amazing presence that immigrants rarely appreciate. Immigrants are stuck within themselves. There are so many masajid in the United States, almost 90% of them are ethnically based. You will rarely find a masjid where multiple ethnicities thrive together. You will find a Pakistani masjid that thrives, a Bengali masjid that thrives, an Egyptian or a Syrian or a Palestinian masjid that thrives. But you won't find a masjid, rarely, that thrives with all of these communities intermingling, because there are a number of challenges in the first three ideas: trusting reason, respecting dissent, stressing societal obligations, so that this squandering of our resources may be able to be addressed by setting priorities, which is the fourth idea, that we as a community have to have shared priorities and have to agree on them, have to have shared vision as to how we work on them, and then we invest the resources. The American Muslim community as a whole is a wealthy community, is an accomplished community, with some parts not as accomplished, other parts very accomplished. And when the Muhajirin, the Ansar shared their resources, they became strong, and they became the they became the enlightened community, okay, in the enlightened city, Medina al-Munawwara. But they had to find that shared set of priorities, and they had to find a deep engagement with the revelation, with the words of Allah, and a deep, deep commitment to obeying Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The final idea that inshallah we will deal with in the future Khateras is this idea of a specific science that developed within the sacred sciences called al-Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyya, principles of jurisprudence, or essences or maxims of jurisprudence. And this is something unique that Umar Farooq Abdullah suggests that we sort of acquire an acquaintance with. We will not become experts unless you're willing to invest your 10 years studying these matters, but we need to become familiar. And it is succinct statements that our scholars developed to express core principles contained in the Quran and the Sunnah, which then become very useful ideas to guide our decision making. All of these 5 things are going to be helpful to make good, sound, rational, spiritually based, contextually relevant, taking into account our constraints of resources and skills. All of these are to be brought into play, and these maxims capture the principles with which we should make decisions and therefore take actions. So in summary, inshallah, we'll deal with trusting our ability to reason, this human innate ability to reason, guided by revelation, respecting dissent amongst ourselves that allows for the emergence of sound ideas that are then challenged with respect to then improve upon it. Stressing our immense obligation to society. The most fundamental obligation as a Muslim you have is to be part of khayra ummatin, that this best ummah raised for mankind, ukhrijat linnas, and it is to really be a light to the and a way and a bearer of the truth of the guidance of the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to all of humanity, right? This is the most important societal obligation, which many of us remain so unaware of. Setting our priorities as a community so that we invest our resources in the best of manners, and then learning these basic maxims. We will deal with a handful of them, inshallah, in the future, that will allow us to become functionally, inshallah, better in making decisions, making sound and viable decisions. So may Allah guide us all to benefit from the works of our scholars. Post 9/11, it has been an amazing flurry of scholarship in the American context, with so many people who have become scholars, who continue to teach us, and so many young Muslims interested in acquiring knowledge, with an equal number of Muslims who have become disenchanted and enchanted with Islam and with Muslim communities and are leaving Islam and Muslim communities. So you've got both of them, and I don't know which one is going faster and which one is going ahead, but it is our dua and hope, and it must be our investment to acquire skills in these 5 areas that our scholars are advising us, so that we become guides to humanity and we fulfill our obligation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. I was going to say أقم الصلاة, but obviously we're not going to have salah, so we will end here, and I give that back to you, Nicole.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Iftekhar, was, as always, excellent, mashallah. So much knowledge. We really need to take time to digest this information. I would always suggest that, as a reminder, our Khateras are posted on our website. We record them every week, so especially when it's information like this, sometimes it's really meaty and we need to take time to digest it and go back over it. So it's always available for you to re-listen. We're going to turn the spotlight over to my daughter-in-law, Hanan Said, mashallah. She's going to talk to us today about Muslims and voting. She has quite a bit of knowledge on this, and I'm going to try to ask her to unmute, and that's me. I know you need a request from me. Give me 1 second. You would think I'd be better at this. after all this time. So much going on. Okay, there you go.
Okay, hi. Assalamualaikum, everyone. I am gonna share a presentation. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to ask permission to do that. Okay, perfect. Yay. Share. Okay, percent. How do you present? Oh, present. Okay. Okay, everyone. So I'll be talking about the importance of the Muslim vote or Muslims voting in general. I have a graphic here with Biden and Trump, but this goes for any time of the year. You should vote constantly all the time. So what happened in 2016? So I'm going to be focusing on the last 4 years, the progress and the bad things that have happened. So Hillary had lost by the popular vote, had lost by the Electoral College, which is a system that was put in place to vote on our behalf. So the electors are chosen by either people we voted for into office or ourselves, right, when we fill in our ballots. Therefore, all in all, we basically failed in putting people in offices that share our viewpoints. And that's where we really messed up in 2016. So the damage done. Trump has inflicted a lot of damage. One is the Muslim ban that was enacted days after he was elected. It was put away for a while, but it is definitely still active. There are countries still being added to that list. Trump appointed 228 federal judges, which basically means that there are 228 judges around the country that he has put in place that either follow his mentality, and they are put in place to uphold the laws of this land, which is absolutely terrifying because some of them also have lifelong appointments. Children in detention centers, family separations, which is still happening, even though COVID is active. Uptick in mass murders in 2019 alone. And obviously 2020, we have COVID, therefore there hasn't been as many. But in 2019, we saw the highest number of mass murders. COVID-19, he did not take care of our health crisis properly, and that is why we are really looking ridiculous to the world, and countries around the world are literally asking us if we're okay. Third world countries are like, are you guys okay? COVID's really hitting you guys hard, which is basically embarrassing to the world for Americans. Rise of visible racism and white supremacy. I say visible because of the fact that racism and white supremacy did not begin with Trump and has always been there. The numbers have never really didn't really rise, but the fact that it's more visible and the fact that we have someone who speaks the way he does and calls the COVID-19 the Chinese virus, which is highly problematic and overall shifts this country's mindset. I say all this to say, this is why we should vote. It is important to vote because other people can't, because other people don't have that ability and to make a better future for everyone. So these are all the damages. So the Muslim ban, I wanted to go more in emphasis because it is more towards us as Muslims. There's Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, Yemen, North Korea, Venezuela, Eritrea, Sudan, Tanzania, Nigeria, Kyrgyzstan, and Myanmar. All these, and majority of these countries are majority Muslim and are going through real crises right now, whether that be war, a genocide, censorship, anything like that. They are really going through serious issues, and the fact that we don't have our doors open to them is very sad. And it's still active. A lot of people thought that the Muslim ban was dead. No, it's very active. They actually just added a few countries just a few months ago, and they're still planning on adding more countries. He has loopholes of how he's doing this. He'll say, for example, Eritrea, we don't want Eritreans to come in because they don't have a visa system or something like that. But in reality, he's just trying to uphold his images of immigrants out of this country, basically. That's what he wanted. And so in retaliation, a lot more people woke up. We broke records. We have people in Congress, in the House, and we have shifted things from the ground up. So our school boards are looking different. Our delegates are looking different. Our, House of Representatives are looking different. Everything is looking different on this end, and slowly looking more like our people, or people that represent our views. We switched states. So Virginia was red, we switched it to blue. Black Lives Matter has become more and more prevalent again because it's more visible, but protests have continued for so long, and longer than most other protests to date. And so why is it important to vote? So numbers matter and representation matters. So numbers matter in that if there aren't many people that care about an issue, if their constituents are caring about an issue, they won't care themselves. Politicians, at the end of the day, are politicians. And so if you don't put in your voice, they're not interested in hearing you. So that's why a lot of different Muslim orgs, including MGage, are having million Muslim votes, which means like they're trying to get as many, like 1 million Muslims to vote this election. So our important issues get pushed on, and the politicians will actually listen when we talk about Myanmar, when we talk about Rohingya, when we talk about Syria and all that stuff. The next generation. So there's a lot of articles out there that have like 13-year-old young girls and boys that talk about how they want someone to vote on their behalf, because if we don't vote according to what we want to see, the people who are younger are more affected. If we don't fix this now, generations in the past will also have to deal with the things that we're dealing with. And so overall, voting is important, and I think it's a very important aspect of our religion, in that this is the best way we can help people around the world, right? So your vote is a privilege. It's not many people have that luxury, and not many people have the luxury of living in a country that has such a peaceful transition of power. And so we get to pick who we want in the transition of power. I have a picture of Movita Johnson Harrell here, who is the first first Muslim House representative, and actually was voted by Pennsylvania, so by the 90th district. She's no longer in office, but I thought that was amazing last year, 2019. She was, in fact, the first. And so in the past 5 years, we've created such amazing history. So when to vote, I say for every election. So every single election, school board, every single thing. So like I said, it's a trickle effect, but like upside down, I guess. If you vote right here, up there will, like, the overall elections will look better. So for example, like if we wanted Biden instead of Bernie, or Bernie instead of Biden, all that stuff we should have voted for in advance. So the primaries, secondaries, all of those count, and overall create the ballot that we're going to get in November. So it's very, very important to vote for every election. And for me, I think it's even more important to vote for the small elections, because they affect you personally more, right? Your school district affects you more. Your street, your district, your delegates, all those things affect you more and speak upon you and what you have as a viewpoint. And so overall, you could also run. So overall, just civically engaged Muslims is the best way to go. And here are some dates that are important to Pennsylvania specifically. Obviously, November 3rd is election day. I didn't put that in. But if you're planning on voting early, if you're planning on registering early, or for a mail-in vote, I definitely recommend to do that immediately, and definitely recommend doing the mail-in vote because of the COVID, and like we're not sure how everything's going with that. Yeah, that's all. Thanks, guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Hanan. Really appreciate it. You can stop sharing your screen. I'm going to ask people, number one, do we have any questions? I'm going to open the floor up, but just by a show of hands, how many people are actually registered to vote? Okay. If you are not registered to vote, we need you to get registered to vote if you have that ability. So if you are a citizen of the United States, please make sure you register to vote. Hanan can, again, repeat those dates. I believe it was, Hanan, October 19th.
Yes. Yeah, for the, yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Hanan, you can stay unmuted just in case we have any questions that come up. So does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask Hanan? Is there any concerns about voting that we wanted to talk about? Tahia, I see your hand is up.
Oh, it was just when you were asking if we're registered to
Got
vote.
it. Got it. Got it. Fantastic. No problem. No problem. So also just to let everyone know, today is the National Recruitment Day for poll workers. Poll workers are traditionally older people, senior citizens, people that are older. If anyone who is healthy and younger and interested in becoming a poll worker, please check your county's voter registration site because they'll have tons of information there on how to do that. I've done it before. I loved doing it, especially as a Muslim. I love doing it. I love the fact that people know I'm a Muslim, so visibly we're able to see that I'm a Muslim and that I was working at the polls. So it's a great way to get out there. So if you are interested in doing that, please do that as soon as possible. Again, I'm going to open the floor up for anyone who has questions. Let me do that. So you can unmute yourself if you have a question, just let me know. Anyone? Okay. Gail, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you could give us the announcements, please.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, my brothers and sisters. Today, our announcements will be brief. Please visit our new website at mainlinemuslimsociety.org, where you can contribute to our ongoing projects through the Amana Foundation. Thank you in advance for your contribution. There is a link on our webpage, mainlinemuslimsociety.org, where you can find the recordings of our Friday programs. We're also live on Facebook. Please share this information with other members of our community. Your board of directors are here to serve the community. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Also, if you or someone you know is sick, please let us know through our Zoom chat so we can say dua for them. Thank you for your attention. It has been appreciated. Wa alaikum salam.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Gail. We appreciate it. Amr, you have a question?
Sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, cool. Yeah, so for Sister Hanan, what would you say to those people who didn't get the results that they wanted in the primary votes? So if they wanted like Bernie Sanders and now they have Joe Biden, but didn't really agree with his policies or his point of view as a presidential candidate, and therefore like the entire two-party system in itself, what would you say to those people who aren't inclined to go vote for like the presidential elections because they didn't get the result they wanted in the primaries?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm one of those people. Obviously, I wanted Bernie. I was like a hardcore Bernie person. But during the primaries, and I think Linda just sort of put it right. It was like during the primaries, you vote selfishly. You vote for the people that you want, that align with your views, and that are really like you like them. Like you're like, I want this person in my race. They a reflection of me, this and that. Bernie Sanders is great. He did not have all of our points of views, but he had the closest, best, I guess, out of the options. Now we have Biden. So this time, it's not about me. It's not about my points of views. It's not about me selfishly. It's about the fact that there are two options, and one is not, Biden is not a great option. He's not a great, like, at all. I don't agree with a lot of the things that he does, but I would rather have him in the office than Trump, because we have seen what Trump has been able to do in the past 4 years. And I can't even imagine what he's able to do in the next 4 more years. A lot of the things that I said, like the 82 federal judges, those things happened under the table. Like, not many people know that he put a lot of people in place. And that power itself, like, a president gets to pick so much and even release prisoners, things like that, that all could be under the table. Like, the president does not need to announce what he's doing, but if you're not paying attention, you're not seeing what he's doing. And so Trump has been very visibly, like, terrible. Now, for the Biden administration, would I be more like excited for it? No. Would I be like super hyped for it? But I would rather have him in the office as my opposition than Trump. I would rather have Biden than Trump. And that's where it comes down. We can't be selfish right now. We got to like vote for the greater good of everyone. That's my answer.
Yeah.
I'd like to answer that question as well. If you choose not to vote at all, you are allowing the what they call the electorate to vote for you in your absence. And that vote will and could go to Trump. So it's important to support whomever the Democratic Party is endorsing, whether you like him or not, because by not voting, you're allowing the opposition to win. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Hanan, thank you for sharing your thoughts. They were really, really well structured. I appreciate that. Thank you. So I want to respond to Trizzy Bop. I have no idea who that is.
That's me.
So to Trizzy Bop's great question, the thing that I think we have to recognize is knowing well American history. It will help us to understand that change has never come from the center. Change in American politics, change in American societal values that becomes central to our lives has never come from the center. That means it has never come from the parties themselves. It has always come from the edges, right? And if you think about the Black Lives Movement, if you think about the Civil Rights Movement, if you think about suffrage movement, if you think about labor movements, all of these were from the edges of society, from the reaches of society, not from the center of society. So that's a point to remember. The fact that that Bernie has come as far as he did is a testament to the activists within the Democratic Party, much of whom are still having angst, like Hanan, right? We are so upset and angry that Bernie didn't get the nomination in 2016. It was stolen from him. Okay, so all of those facts, does it empower you to keep pushing for change within the Democratic Party, even if it means, inshallah, in the future, introducing a third and a fourth and a fifth party? Like the Swedes have it and Norway has it, where it is very hard for one party to control. And in the case of the United States, it's a two-party system, both of whom are primarily beholden to whom? To corporate interests, and therefore everything that happens is not in the interest of the public and the individuals, but of the interest of the oligarchy of wealthy, highly wealthy individuals, right, or corporations. No different than the founding of this country. If you look at the alternative ways of looking at American history. So the bottom line is, we need to continue engaging. We need to continue demanding and pushing for change. And when you do that, then change will come even within the Democratic Party. And there are many Republicans that are absolutely disgusted with how the Republican Party has gone, and we hope and pray that they will be catalysts to change within the party itself, within the the Republican Party. So the condition of the believer is always hopeful, right? If it's difficult, then we are patient and we persevere. And if it is easy, then we are grateful. So we have to persevere with the test of Trump. But the test of Trump isn't Trump. It is really a broken social contract that we have in this country, that we as Muslims stand the most to be able to contribute towards a change, right? So all of us, I'm counting for 20 squares of beautiful Muslim believers, right? Are all of you engaged in this process of change? Like Hanan is suggesting that we need to be, and the minimum is voting, but the maximum is unlimited, you know? Are we engaged in terms of changing our society? This is the mandate of the time, and this is the demand of the Quran, that we stay engaged. There was another short khatira. Thank you.
Just to make a quick comment. So Mainline Muslim Society in and of itself as an organization is a non-bipartisan, is a bipartisan organization. So whether you vote Democrat, whether you vote Republican, that is a personal decision. And the information given and the views expressed were those of the individuals that gave them, and those are their personal preferences and voting choices. So just a small disclaimer. And
post disclaimer, vote Democrat.
So again, everyone has the choice to vote as they see fit. So inshallah, thank you everyone for your time. Again, Ibrahim has reminded us that CARE Pennsylvania and Philadelphia are looking for volunteers during this election period. Please get involved. If you're not engaged at this time, please get involved. Again, National Poll Worker Registration Day today. Please register to become a poll worker if you have not already. Thank you to Hanan for your talk. Thank you to Brother Iftekhar for yours. Our newlyweds seem to be giggling when they sit next to each other, so that's always helpful. So everyone, listen, thank you again. Have a wonderful week. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us. May He keep those of our children that are back to school safe and in good health. Those of our children that are now at universities, either moving in or there, let them be safe, inshallah, and smart to make wise choices while they're there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let us all join together again next Friday, inshallah, for this Khatera, and inshallah, bring us together and help us to make wise choices, both in our political life and in our deen, inshallah. So, Ameen, Jazakallah khair to everyone. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Alaikum salam.